This happened a few months back. I wanted to surprise my girlfriend, so I planned a trip to Cincinnati and took her to the Newport Aquarium. We needed a break from staying at my parents' house, so I booked an Airbnb on the outskirts of town for the weekend. The pictures of the place looked nice, and we were both excited to have some time for ourselves and explore the area. However, when we arrived, we were a bit let down. The apartment wasn't in great shape. There was trash left by the previous guests, and it looked much older than the photos online. The walls had cracks, and the paint was peeling in spots. There wasn't much furniture, just a bed, a worn-out couch, and a few basic kitchen appliances like a small fridge and a microwave. I checked the bed to make sure there were no bed bugs, inspected for mold, and tested the door locks. Then I went to the bathroom, which was in bad condition. The shower had old stains, the toilet barely flushed, and the sink had very low water pressure. The mirror was chipped, and the tiles on the floor were cracked. It was far from the cozy weekend getaway we had imagined. After a day of exploring the town, we were both tired and went to bed. About an hour later, as I was trying to fall asleep, I realized I needed to use the bathroom. I went in, sat down on the toilet, and started scrolling through my phone. That's when something weird happened. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed movement. I looked up, and the bathroom door had opened on its own, slowly creaking until it hit the shower curtain. I froze, trying to figure out what was happening. I thought maybe it was just a draft, but then I heard the shower suddenly turn on. The sound of water rushing out startled me. I was sitting there, pants down, terrified and unable to move. After about 7 seconds, I finally stood up and turned off the shower. Shaking, I rushed back to the bedroom and locked the door behind me. My girlfriend, who had been asleep through it all, woke up when she heard me close the door. I told her everything, from the door moving by itself to the shower turning on. I was so freaked out I couldn't calm down. My mind raced and I was too scared to sleep. I kept staring at the door, expecting something else to happen. I hid under the blankets, trying to block out any noise and telling myself nothing more would happen. But I couldn't shake the fear. Somehow I made it through the night. When the sun came up, I felt brave enough to check the bathroom. I'd left the door open, forgotten to flush the toilet, and the tap was still dripping because I'd rushed out so fast. I still don't know why the shower turned on by itself, but that night made me think about things I hadn't believed in before. Now I'm more open to the idea that maybe there are things around us we can't fully understand. This happened in 2018, when my boyfriend and I went to Virginia for a weekend trip with another couple. We decided to stay at an Airbnb that the other couple found. The place looked nice online and fit our budget, but it was a bit far from downtown, like 15 or 20 minutes away. It wasn't a huge deal, but it was a little annoying being so far out. The neighborhood seemed fine, but as soon as we walked into the house, I got a weird feeling. I can't really explain it, but something about the place felt off. For example, when I went to unpack in the bedroom, I opened the closet, and it was completely empty, except for one small chair. No hangers, no extra towels, nothing. Just this chair sitting there. It felt strange, even though it probably doesn't sound like a big deal. After unpacking a bit, we all went out to meet some friends in the city. We had a few drinks, and by the time we got back to the Airbnb, it was around 1:30 a.m. We were pretty tired, so we headed straight to bed. Usually, when I've had a few drinks, I sleep like a rock, but this night was different. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of someone giggling. It was quiet at first, so I thought maybe my boyfriend was laughing in his sleep. But then it got louder, and it sounded like the giggling was coming from outside, near the window behind our bed. I got up to check, but there was no one out there. Everything went quiet again, and I figured it was over. But just as I was about to go back to bed, the giggling started again. Only this time, it wasn't quiet. It turned into full-on laughter, like someone was standing right outside our window, laughing hysterically at 3 a.m. At that point, I realized my boyfriend was awake too. He squeezed my hand and asked if I saw anyone. I didn't. The laughter went on for what felt like 15 minutes before it finally stopped. We stayed awake until around 4 a.m., just watching and listening to make sure it didn't start again. The next morning, we asked the other couple if they heard anything, but they said no. One of them even suggested I might have dreamt it, but that didn't make sense since my boyfriend heard it too. I don't know what was creepier, hearing that weird laughter in the middle of the night, or the fact that there was no one out there when we looked. Maybe whoever it was stood right under the window where we couldn't see them. But why would someone do that? Who just stands outside laughing for 15 minutes in the middle of the night and then leaves without a word? Thankfully, nothing else weird happened, and we went home as planned. But to this day, my boyfriend and I still think of it as one of the creepiest things that's ever happened to us. I've always been skeptical about ghosts, even though I love ghost stories and watching paranormal videos. I've visited several famous haunted places, like the Omni Parker House in Boston and the Whaley House in San Diego. Despite all that, I've never actually seen or experienced anything that convinced me ghosts are real. Part of me wants to believe, but I'm also afraid of seeing something paranormal. That all changed a few months ago. I was planning a surprise trip for my girlfriend's 25th birthday. Since she had mentioned wanting to go skiing, I booked an Airbnb cabin in Tahoe, California. I also invited some of her closest friends. The cabin was big, with space for 10 people. There was a basement with 2 beds, a room on the main floor, and 3 rooms upstairs. My girlfriend and I took the master bedroom. Another couple stayed in a room across the hall, and her cousin had a room next door. The first night was fun. We had drinks, played games, and enjoyed each other's company. We decorated the living room with streamers and balloons, and everything was going great. Toward the end of the night, though, some of the balloons started popping, for no reason. Someone said it was because they were too close to the heater, but not all the balloons were near it. I just shrugged it off. The next day, after skiing, we came back to the cabin for more drinks and fun. We were all exhausted and decided to go to bed earlier, around 11:30 or so. That's when things got strange. It was cold, so I went downstairs to adjust the thermostat. As I walked down the dark stairwell, I heard the floor creaking behind me. I thought it was one of my friends coming to get a drink or something. But when I stopped at the thermostat, the creaking continued, then suddenly stopped a few feet behind me. I turned around and said, "What's up? Need something?" But no one was there. It felt like someone was watching me, and I was freaked out. I went back upstairs, but about 30 minutes later it was still cold, so I decided to turn up the heat again. This time I turned on the hallway light to see better as I went downstairs. When I reached the thermostat, everything seemed normal, no creaking this time. But as I was adjusting the thermostat, I heard a noise. The foosball ball, which was on the table near the fireplace, suddenly rolled across the table and hit the side. No one was around, and I hadn't touched it. I was really scared at that point and rushed back upstairs. I didn't say anything that night, but my mind was racing. The next morning, as we were packing up, my girlfriend's friend mentioned the balloons. It gave me the chance to share what had happened to me. When I told my story, she went pale and serious. She said that the night before, she had seen a dark figure standing at the foot of her bed. She was terrified and shook her boyfriend awake, but by then, the figure had disappeared. Then, my girlfriend's cousin mentioned hearing strange breathing sounds in her room, but she had assumed it was just the cabin settling. On their own, these things might seem normal, but together they were hard to ignore. I had never believed in ghosts before, but after that weekend, I'm not so sure. I just hope I don't experience anything like that again. When I was 16, my family moved into a new house in a nice neighborhood. I loved it right away. It was big, had a great backyard, and plenty of space. I even got to choose my own room. and I was excited to unpack and decorate. Everything was great for about a week. My little brother and I usually got home from school an hour before my mom. One day when I got home first, I dropped my bag on the kitchen table and saw my cat standing still, staring at the door that led to the garage. I joked with him, asking, "What are you doing?" and walked over to him. But before I could touch him, I heard a woman scream from the garage. My cat freaked out and ran away. I grabbed my brother and ran outside. I called my mom, but she didn't think much of it. She said I must have imagined it. My brother didn't hear anything either. When my mom got home, we checked the garage and the house, but we didn't find anything. She thought I was stressed or had been watching too many scary movies. I didn't argue because I knew she wouldn't believe me. Later, when I went to my room, I froze in the doorway. My closet door was hanging off its track, like someone had tried to pull it off. My pillow, which is usually too soft to stand up, was somehow standing upright in the middle of the room. I yelled for my mom, and she came in with my brother. They didn't see anything strange, and when I pointed to the pillow, it had fallen flat like it should be. Mom brushed it off, saying I must have knocked the pillow off the bed earlier. I knew I hadn't. I even tried for a few minutes to make the pillow stand up like that again, but I couldn't. Still, I didn't feel scared enough to lose sleep. That night, I went to bed like usual. Around 3 a.m., I woke up and went to the bathroom. When I came back, I froze again. In the dim light from the hallway, I could see a dark figure sitting on the edge of my bed. It looked like a big man, but I couldn't make out any details. My heart started racing, and I squinted, trying to see if it was just my eyes playing tricks on me. Before I could react, the figure stood up and rushed at me. I was so scared that I fell to the floor and hit the light switch by accident. When the light came on, the figure was gone. My mom and brother ran in, and I was crying, trying to explain what had happened. But Mom just said, "You were dreaming," and told me to go back to bed. I was wide awake though, and I knew what I saw. The next day at school was normal, but when I got home, the house didn't feel the same. My room, which I used to love, felt cold and strange. It no longer felt like my space. I felt like I was living in someone else's house. I was so desperate to understand what was happening that I made a Ouija board out of cardboard and a bottle cap. I tried talking to it, but nothing happened. Feeling silly, I tossed it aside and went to bed. Later that night, I heard a rattling sound. I thought it was just a moth bumping against the window, but when I turned on the light, I saw the bottle cap spinning fast on the floor. I gasped, and as soon as I did, the cap stopped spinning. I freaked out, ripped the board in half, and threw it away. That night, I woke up feeling cold, like my blanket had fallen off. I reached around the bed to find it, but I couldn't. When I took off my sleep mask, I saw the blanket floating above me, standing straight up in the air like it was 6 feet tall. Panicked, I tried to move, but the blanket suddenly fell on top of me, pressing down like something heavy was holding it there. I don't remember much after that, but when I woke up the next morning, my body hurt, my blindfold was off, and my blanket was on the floor. I was terrified. I told my mom everything, but she didn't believe me, as usual. She told me to stay home from school and rest. When she and my brother left for the day, I stayed in bed, crying. A few minutes later, I heard a man's voice say, "I'm sorry about your mom," right next to me. That was it. I couldn't stay in the house anymore. I got up and walked to school, even though I usually wouldn't. But I was more scared of what was in the house than of walking alone. Not long after we moved out, my mom finally started to believe me, and once we left, everything stopped. I'm relieved, but I still wonder what it was and why it only bothered me.